What 24 hours will this make? What difference will it make?
I mean, it's going to be a lot of negotiations from here on with Speaker or potential Speaker McCarthy, trying to see if he can negotiate a deal with the House Freedom Caucus. We see it pretty hard to see that deal coming. He needs to flip 11 votes. He needs to get another 9 members to vote present in order to get the speakership. In our view, the best case at this point is that some of those Democrats get tired. They don't want to sit on the floor all day. Potentially they don't show up tomorrow, and the threshold for Kevin McCarthy to win the speakership goes down. Certainly not a guarantee that that happens. It's certainly a difficult fight regardless.
Courtney, what do you think plan B is here?
Yeah, so I mean, we're not seeing a lot of talk about alternates yet from most of the Republican Party. There seems to be a strong push from the 90% that are voting for Kevin McCarthy to show that the 10% that are not, that they don't have power, that they don't want to start off this new Congress giving a precedent of giving in. But there is going to have to be a really difficult concerted effort to keep those yes votes strong. If progress can't be made tomorrow, if progress can't be made soon, talk is going to pick up about those alternative candidates. You do have Steve Scalise and Jim Jordan, both being the names that are being floated around currently right now. And Jim Jordan isn't exactly the unity candidate, but now there is Steve Scalise, certainly probably more than Jim Jordan, but it's going to be difficult. If you remember 2015, when Paul Ryan was put forward as that unity candidate, he still didn't win all the GOP votes. 43 Republicans voted against him in internal elections. 9 Republicans voted against him on the floor. He benefited from having an additional 20 plus Republicans than McCarthy has right now. So there's not a clear unity candidate for Republicans at this point, and that's what McCarthy's trying to show.
Is there a unity candidate that could get some Democrats on the other side of it? I mean, if their choices are Scalise, Jim Jordan, and Kevin McCarthy, is there somebody else that can be put out that the Democrats might actually vote for?
There's certainly other names that are being floated around. You have Pat McHenry being floated around, although he said that he doesn't want it. There's going to be a bunch of names as we get further and further without potentially having a speaker at this point, because they can't do any business. So the longer this goes on, more names are going to be floated around. There could be a potential for some deal making with Democrats, but at this point, Republicans are going to try to show that they can govern amongst themselves and try to find that candidate that they can get to 218 on.
Let's talk about debt ceilings, defaults, and when the market should be worried. Courtney, what are you thinking?
Yeah, so I mean, that's the most important thing that we're thinking about, where this entire issue on the speakership is really a proxy for the debt ceiling, because no matter who is in the speaker's office, this is going to be an issue. It's an issue that the House Freedom Caucus is trying to make about Kevin McCarthy, where they're trying to make sure that whoever is speaker isn't going to make a deal on the debt ceiling with Democrats. But the reality is that whoever is speaker has to make a deal on the debt ceiling with Democrats. Even in 2011, when Republicans had the majority, they relied on Democratic votes to raise the debt limit. So we don't have a clear deadline on when the debt ceiling has to be raised. All eyes right now are kind of on when the CBO releases their January 10-year budget estimates, where we get net interest costs and kind of get a better estimate for the debt ceiling. But it's probably going to be sometime around summer, potentially if they can buy time with extraordinary measures from Treasury in 3Q. Market probably is going to get concerned around May, in our view.
Courtney, is there a possibility that the Republicans take such heat for this and not being able to function, that it actually winds up making the debt ceiling conversation better because they know what the alternative winds up looking like? Or am I just talking crazy?
Yeah, I don't think so, because at the end of the day, the 20 members at this point that are holding up the speakership vote, they're going to hold up the debt ceiling vote as well. And they're not going to, I mean, the House Freedom Caucus members typically don't vote for debt ceiling increase, regardless of if there's spending cuts attached to it. So, these members are going to raise issues with the debt ceiling once we get to that point. And again, that CBO release, when we get it later this month, that's going to show a huge increase in our net interest costs. And I think that that's going to really bring back the return of deficit politics in the U.S., where there's going to be increased focus on our debt to GDP ratio, which is still at levels that we haven't really seen since the post-World War II era. Increased focus on the fact that our net interest costs this year are going to be approaching 15% of tax revenues. That's going to be where Republicans are, and they're going to want, when it comes to the debt ceiling, at a minimum spending cuts. That was the deal that was brokered in 2011 when you had a Republican House and a Democratic Senate. But Democrats, we don't think, are going to be, as eager, and they weren't eager in 2011, to make that deal where there's spending cuts, especially discretionary spending cuts, in return for raising the debt ceiling.
Courtney, is this episode diminishing Donald Trump's authority within the Republican Party?
That's a good question. We'll see if come tomorrow, when they do potentially hold a vote for the speakership, if some of those Republicans, because of President Trump's endorsement, decide to change their viewpoint. But President Trump had been endorsing McCarthy ahead of this. He's just become a little more public this morning. I think it just shows that these Republican members, very focused on giving themselves some power, also very focused on making this about the debt ceiling and about issues, that they're going to try to stake their congressional legacies on. And it's not really about President Trump at this point. It's about, holding strong to the viewpoints that they have regarding how the Republicans should govern in this Congress.